I want to share with you 5 lies that my pastor told me. So I did this video a while back called 5 Lies My Pastor Told Me. And as I said at that time, and I'll say it again now, I have barely even had pastors in my life, and one pastor that I did have was quite a mentor to me that I really loved him a lot. So this is not actually directed to any particular pastor. The idea comes from a book called 5 Lies My Teacher Told Me that I had to read in university, and it was talking about sort of the mythology, the lies in American history, and I thought it's kind of a cool way to approach some of the problems that I have with evangelical fundamentalism and the way that it was given to me. So to start the video, I should say my name is Chris. I have an MDiv, an MA in theology, a PhD in Christian origins. I was a youth pastor for 10 years in a Baptist church. I've been in church in one way or another for almost as long as I can remember, and I still consider myself a Christian, even though I am certainly no longer a conservative evangelical. And this feels like a good place to say, if you haven't yet subscribed, do that now. So I think that coming out of conservative evangelicalism and going through a process that a lot of people refer to now as deconstruction, you sort of start to question a lot of the things you've heard your whole life. And that's where I want to go with this video, because I think these beliefs that are told to us often have really damaging consequences. And that's why these are 5 more lies my pastor told me. The first one that really hit me as I was deconstructing, it was a difficult time. Deconstruction, if you're going through it, is a really difficult, lonely, confusing time. And the lie hit me. I was thinking about this thing that we say, God answers prayer. I think maybe somebody even said it to me. And I was like, God answers prayer. This is something that I've heard from the pulpit a lot. I've even told people God answers prayer. And then with that, I kind of had this trite little thing that we would say, God always answers prayer. Sometimes he says yes, sometimes he says no, and sometimes he says wait. And this one time I was like, wait, that's literally what happens with every single human being. Is if there's something that you want to happen, whether it's something good or you want to be cured of a disease or even, big things, little things, there are 3 things that could happen when there's something that you want. It might happen, it might not happen, or it might happen right now. And I think to this day, the spiritualizing of that process that literally every single human being goes through is kind of laughable. As I stop and think about it, it's like, why did this phrase mean anything to me? It means absolutely nothing. But I think it was just the way that we thought we were saying something. We thought we were saying something meaningful about God and prayer. And I think it kind of comes back to seeing, like, we basically saw God as our genie or as our personal, not slot machine is maybe not, well, maybe it is a slot machine, a personal slot machine, because you put in your prayer, you might win, you might not win, or maybe you'll win if you play again. So it's just really simplistic. It's really trite. And I think even if you look at Christian theology, there's a lot more depth to understanding of what prayer actually is and does, especially as people have tried to wrestle with the belief that God is, unchanging and has planned everything. And then somehow we're just like swaying God with our words, and maybe prayer is actually more about us. Anyway, there's a lot of people talking about prayer. It's not really a subject I feel super qualified to talk about. But one thing I will never say again is God answers prayer. And the answer will be yes, no, or wait. Maybe we're praying wrong. The second really dangerous lie that gets propagated from the platform is the lie that there is no hope outside of Christianity, especially when it's like there's no hope outside of our specific brand of Christianity. And I think as I see people deconstruct, I think the irony of this lie is that people end up internalizing it so much. And what you end up thinking if you're going through deconstruction or loss of faith, and most of us don't choose to do this, most of us were kind of pushed into it by the reality of what we saw when we looked into the Christian tradition or, whatever. So if you're going through deconstruction and you've internalized the belief that losing Christianity fundamentally means losing your hope, that there's not really any other reason to be alive or to hope, it has some really dangerous implications for you. So if you're deconstructing and all of a sudden you think that deconstructing means saying, yes, I agree, life has no hope, even subconsciously, even if you don't actually put this together, it's really dangerous. And I think it's one of those things where this mythology around hopefulness works really well to build communities. It can, form really strong community bonds, and people think that they're together and having this hope, but it really does a lot of damage to the people who leave, because if we're being honest, really, life does have a lot of hope. There have been many other humans who have found hope in life outside of Christianity, both for thousands of years before Christianity was even founded. Many people around the world have never even heard of Christianity, probably less and less now, but throughout history. And human beings have found different ways to have hope. And the thing that makes this extra offensive to me is that fundamentally what a lot of conservative evangelicals mean when they define hope has nothing to do with like, helping people or building the kingdom of God on earth or, showing love or any of those things. They basically mean the hope of like, this life is pointless. When I die, I've got a ticket to get me out of hell. That's basically like the get out of hell free card. To this day, I stay in the Christian tradition and I find a lot of hope in the Christian tradition, but I don't have hope in it because it's a get me out of hell free card or get me into heaven free card. Actually, I think there's a lot of hope in the here and now by, connecting people and building beautiful communities, helping people find meaning, belonging, loving people, taking care of people. Like all of these things are reasons for hope that have a lot more to do than just some like happily ever after metaphysical endgame. And I think a lot of people would have an easier time of deconstructing if they didn't subconsciously or maybe even consciously believe that leaving conservative evangelicalism means agreeing to never have hope again in your life, because it's just not how it works. Line number 3, we are being persecuted. I think the persecution complex throughout history of Christianity is interesting, and Christians have occasionally been persecuted. Christians right now in the US are sure as hell not being persecuted. You have tremendous political power, amazing clout, and I think what happens is that a lot of Christians have gotten so used to having enormous privilege and power in Western societies that as that pulls back a little bit, you see the loss of your exceptional privilege as persecution. I think Christianity actually has a long persecution complex. And as you study early Christianity, I think there are probably moments of something we could call persecution. But as a lot of biblical scholars, including Candida Moss, have argued, the persecution is probably blown out of proportion. And you have to remember that early Christians ended up fetishizing persecution. They really were excited about it, so that they were looking for persecution. They were basically trying to find persecution everywhere they could, and they're working more and more of it into their mythology. And that's why to this day, everybody thinks all the apostles were persecuted and died. And the truth is we just don't really know that. But coming to the modern world, what this ends up being is persecution is often a loss of privilege. So for example, how many people have thought that schools are persecuting Christians by not teaching creationism alongside of evolutionism, even though one of those is actually science and one is a religious belief? And then this goes even further, because I think, like, I remember being a kid and hearing that gay marriage was going to be legalized, and there were people who thought that was persecution. Like, how does that possibly affect me if gay people want to get married? It has no bearing on my life as a Christian whatsoever. But this is part of the really messed up mental twist you can do, is you can turn almost anything I don't like into persecution. Anything that is, something that I don't want to happen in the world, I can see as persecution, somebody making choices or acting against what I personally believe. Now, I think there are Christians being persecuted in different parts of the world today. It's actually an important conversation, and it minimizes it when conservative evangelicals with an enormous amount of political power, enormous amount of social privilege, think that they are being persecuted when that is lost or even challenged the slightest little bit. The fourth line my pastor told me is one that I've reflected on a lot starting this channel, because somebody said to me when I was getting started, just be careful because people need hope. And I've thought a lot about the hope that evangelical fundamentalism brings, because I think it does give people a certain type of hope. I can't deny that. But I think what happens is you have a community of people, and when you're in a conservative evangelical community, you only hear from the people who are still there. You don't hear from the people that, when you have a really toxic community, people get pushed out. At the margins of any faith community, you have people who have been pushed out and bullied and neglected. And the idea that the hope of the people still within the community is more important and worth preserving, even at the expense of sacrificing the well-being or sacrificing the ability to speak truth to the injustices that people have faced in those communities and have left, is frankly ridiculous. If people want to get hope from a Christian, a very conservative community, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I think a lot of people think I even started my YouTube channel to try to convince Christians to leave or something. I don't care. But what really bugs me is that we try to have a conversation about deconstruction. We try to have conversations about why people are leaving the faith. Or as a Bible scholar, I just want to have conversations about the Bible in really interesting ways that aren't like the cookie cutter answers I was given about the Bible. And that is somehow interpreted as taking away the hope of the people in the community, that somehow I want to attack people's hope. Again, if you have hope there, stay there. Be happy. That's great. But the work that conservative evangelical communities are doing is not so important and vital that it should never be challenged or questioned, or that we shouldn't have conversations about the people who are leaving. And I think the fifth and probably most pernicious lie is that non-Christians aren't happy. Now, this is dangerous on two fronts. On the first front, it's dangerous because kind of what I said in the second point, that people think there's no hope outside of Christianity. So again, if people think they're leaving the faith, they think that, well, I'm agreeing not to have hope, or I'm agreeing that I'm never going to be happy. And I mean, that's just ridiculous. Humans are happy and sad for a lot of different reasons. I think faith might have something to do with that for some people. There's certainly, I think, some evidence that shows that people in faith communities, as they get older, can, live longer and that sort of thing. Like, there's certainly benefits from being in a faith community. Don't know if that has to be a fundamentalist extreme faith community. I think that can actually do damage to you. But I think the irony of this lie is that it actually hurts people still in the community a lot more than the people who've left. Because the people in the community then feel the pressure to look happy, to be happy, to pretend to be happy all the time. We say things like, the joy of the Lord is our strength. So there's almost this like fake happiness within the community. Not saying some people aren't happy in the community. I think there's, happiness within conservative evangelical communities. But if you are forced to feel like you have to manufacture this happiness, what happens when people have depression? What happens when people actually have serious struggles to feel quote unquote happy? What you find is that those people are often ostracized, they're neglected, they often push their feelings down, they often don't talk about their depression because they feel that there's no space for that, because we have to look happy all the time. We even have to look happy that we can stick it to the atheists, so that they can be upset by how happy we are. And I think in some communities, this can even go as far as to extend to, denying mental health care, to say like, you shouldn't be seeking a therapist if you feel that you're depressed. There's a really dangerous kind of underlying logic that can actually really hurt people, even still in communities. And I think for that reason, this is the fifth lie that I wanted to talk about here. Nobody's happy all the time. So those are 5 more lies that my pastor told me that I told. I told these lies as a pastor sometimes. I'm very sorry to say that I replicated some of these. And as always, I'd love to know what you think. Leave some comments down below. Let me know. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, take a second and do that. I'm going to be back with more videos on early Christianity, and of course, a little bit on stuff like this, deconstruction as well. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate the time you took to be here, and I'll talk to you soon.